Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the San Francisco Revival Podcast. My name is Julio. I'm the Director of Communications at Mission Housing. I'm here joined by three very Mission Housing, the most VIPs that I can think of for our podcast and for our organization. Shira Bakta, who is the Director of Community Engagement. Marcia Contreras, the Deputy Executive Director, and Sam Moss making his San Francisco Revival debut. Welcome, dude.
Thank you.
I wanted to bring everyone together today to talk about we're mere hours away from the groundbreaking ceremony at 1979 Mission, Phase 1, 136 units of PSH housing going up. Construction technically started in December. On Thursday, April 23rd, just to put a timestamp on it, we will be celebrating officially the groundbreaking of the Marvel and the Mission, La Maravilla and La Mision. So we're extremely excited at Mission Housing, obviously, and we're celebrating 55 years of being the nonprofit developer here in the Mission District, the premier developer of affordable housing here in the Mission District to commemorate this monumental event for all of us here at Mission Housing. And I want to bring all three of you here to discuss the Marvel in the Mission, La Maravilla and La Mision is such a nuanced, such a historical development that in order to properly tell its story, we would need an entire podcast series, but I do want to put it in context of our 55th anniversary. So as we're talking a little bit about the project today, we'll put some links in the bio or in the description, to tell a little more historical context for those that are curious, because it is a super interesting project. But here for this podcast, I do just want to keep it here internally about what we're thinking about as we head into this such a monumental date for the organization. So let's start with Marcia. If you could put it into words, into like one sentence, how you're feeling now that we're a couple hours away from the groundbreaking ceremony. How would you put your thoughts into words?
I think you said it, Julio. Excited. I'm just very excited to see the building come to life, right? This was a long time planning, advocating, and we can get into a little bit more of that later on. But I'm excited. I feel thrilled that we're celebrating our groundbreaking on Thursday, but also very accomplished. So accomplished that I'm wearing my T-shirt today to represent. Yes, that's right.
That's when we brought you back, by the way.
For the T-shirts.
It was the T-shirt thing that we
100%, man. That's the only reason I do this. Yeah.
Sam, how about you? Put your words into a sentence if you can.
I am so appreciative of everything. I walk by the Marvel every day, and I just really appreciate that I get to have my dream job and that we get to build this historic, monumental asset for the community. I pinch myself every day walking by it. It still seems unbelievable, but the beauty of what we do is that at the end of the day, we build a tangible, physical building that we can leave behind as our legacy, and I'm so proud to be part of the Mission Housing legacy.
Shira, how about yourself?
In one sentence, obviously, seconding what Sam and Marcia said, but I feel relieved that we got here, especially after a decade-long fight. And also I feel grounded about all the work that's still to come, both in construction and, of course, running the building as a community asset.
Yeah, I'll add here. It feels a little surreal. I've been working here for almost 10 years. This is our fourth groundbreaking together. And to me, like I was reminiscing, I was like, this sort of feeling never gets old. We get hit from left, right, up, down, different pressures and stressors that come with building affordable housing and maintaining affordable housing, and then we get these moments of like sunlight. Right, we're in the middle of rain now. We get some sunlight on Thursday, where it just feels really like prideful to have like these sort of opportunities to be able to share with community these accomplishments. And that's what we're hoping for on Thursdays, for community to come out and come ready to celebrate, not just to hear speeches, but to participate in all the activities. We have a timeline there where we try to tell the story as best we can. We have activations to write postcards to future tenants, because it is about hope and care for our neighbors. We'll have some live muraling, and obviously the speeches and the food and all the fun stuff that comes with the Mission Housing Party. So we hope people come ready. I want to take it back a little bit, because we are celebrating our 55th anniversary at Mission Housing this year. And I'll start with Marcia. Marcia, if you could go back and go back to 2009, which is when you first started, and talk to that younger Marcia, and tell her, hey, you're about to break.
Still young, my friend.
One day in the future, Marcia, you will break ground at 1979 Mission. What do you think she would say? How would that conversation go?
Number one, I just have to say I'm still young.
That's why I said younger.
Okay.
I said younger.
What would I say? Jesus. I mean, as you guys know, I went to public school here. I am from San Francisco, and I've walked that corner many, many years. I wouldn't have imagined that we would build there. We would be building there. I mean, I did come across some renderings about 1950 Mission. So I kind of knew that something would happen there eventually, but at that corner, never crossed my mind. However, I think there was always a need to make a change. Because, I think that when we build also, we bring in a different perspective, right, about providing stable housing to folks. And I look at that corridor now as we are building, and it's just, it warms my heart to see that we are making a change. But back then, I don't think that I would have even imagined, and I don't know if you guys have a different perspective of it when you guys joined Mission Housing, but I didn't even think that we would probably build there. So it's such a win-win situation overall.
I'm sure during that time, Sam, it was like, this is 2009, so you came in, 2012?
Yep, 2012.
It must have been like even now walking by there, I know you in other times that we talked about other developments, how surreal it feels. But I'm curious too, like, what would you tell younger, less gray-haired Sam Moss? Not that you have any grays now, but
I'm blessed. Thanks, Dad. When I got hired, I was hired as an asset manager, and Mission Housing was going through a rough patch, and I was hired to help get us out of some bad projects that we'd done across the state. And so when I first started, man, I was thinking like survival, how do we make sure the 8 of us, which is how many it was when I got hired and when Marcy and I took over, keep our jobs, and that Mission Housing keeps going. And every year, little by little, one win after another, some small, some large, people started to talk about, there's no development in the Mission. It's been a decade since something was built. And, so for a long time, I was like, I don't know, chip on my shoulder, like, well, we're here, everyone. I can hear you talking about us. I'm in the room, and once Marcy and I took over and we kind of rebuilt ourselves, re-solidified ourselves, then we earnestly, Plaza 16 gets started, Chirag and the organizing our Mission, No Eviction, all these other ones. We have our first meeting at Central del Pueblo next door. I actually think about that meeting from 2014 more than any other meeting, because it was technically kind of one of the first ones that Mission Housing helped call for the whole community. Chirag helped, coordinate it. And I don't even know if you were with us yet. I think you might have still even been.
Yeah, I was still with Ms. Rock. Yep.
MS Rock. And it's a core memory of me sitting around in that circle with like 50 Mission community members. Fernando Gomez Benitez, Pete Gallegos, these OGs, and us being accepted. They like wanted to hear our opinion. And so that's where we were 14 years ago, which is so far away with, hey, let's go build these 300 units above a BART station. And so lately I've been thinking a lot about that, just with how far Mission Housing has come in 55 years. And I'm real proud of what I see.
But could we also say, Sam, that in the middle of all that, we were also doing a full rehab of 3 of our sites. So our attention was also trying to revamp some of our buildings which was Esperanza, Batel, and Colosimo. It was exactly at that same time.
And it's actually why Mission was able to start building ourselves back into a developer by taking care of our oldest buildings first and keeping our eyes on the main prize, which is ensuring that all of our current tenants have high quality, affordable housing.
Housing preservation is part of the long-term stewardship, right?
He mentioned that meeting. We have pictures on the timeline that we dug up, dating back from 2014. I think is one of the first ones we were able to find with the meeting over at the Theater La Victoria. Is that right? Right, it's just right across the street, actually, from where we're going to be doing the groundbreaking. Do you remember that meeting? Not the Victoria one. I don't think you told me you weren't at that one, but do you remember the one that Sam? I know you were in that picture. You're wearing a purple shirt.
Yeah.
It was the next door.
Yeah, it was right here.
Spikier hair.
CDP.
Yeah,
I did have
he was just
spikier hair, just maybe a little less grays back then.
Different kind of grays.
Not gray.
Different.
Different kind of grays.
No, it's a lot of salt. This was, at that time I was maybe a couple years into organizing in San Francisco. I'd done most of my work in other places, and that was at that time there was a massive necessity for unity in the neighborhood, right? Like, it's the only way that we're going to be able to win and create some kind of counterpower to what was happening with gentrification at the time was if all the community orgs got together, decided on strategy, and decided to take this fight on, right? And historically, Mission Housing was one of the strongest community orgs, right? And so I'm glad that the place felt welcoming for everybody in, and I think it was just a really good opportunity for timing and for stuff to really coalesce in a space of all right, we're neighborhoods facing this massive fight. Let's get everybody together. Let's get all the stakeholders together, and let's fight this thing together, right? So it was, and honestly, a few months after that, maybe less than a year after that, I was working at Mission Housing.
Great to see.
Because there's pictures of the other.
The one for the Battelle rehab actually was during my first week at Mission Housing.
We have that timeline that illustrates the journey, and I hope people are able to check it out and see just how much work went into this. And there's several moments there that throughout my time at Mission Housing, I've had the pleasure of being educated on, just to get a grasp of just all the actual work, grassroots work that has to go into building anything, let alone 300 units atop a BART station. I'm curious of all the moments that are on that timeline, if there are maybe about two or three that really stick out to you as, these were pivotal moments in the fight for the Marvel and the Mission, La Maravilla, La Mision.
Yeah, definitely. The first one that comes to mind is the major action we did at the Maximus's community meeting at the Laborers Union Hall for Laborers 261. Is that way? Is that way? Yeah. And so, eventually, if you go that way, eventually you come on that side. But that was, it was Maximus hosted a community benefits meeting in the neighborhood. The original planning that we were doing on what we would do is what usually happens at these meetings is, we bring a lot of people. We let them give their presentation. Maybe there's some booing or some, jeering. And then at the end, we ask really critical questions, right? And so this stands out because that's not how the meeting went. Because in our planning, we decided that there was a need to shift up the strategy in how we actually confront this development and this developer. And it was decided to take on more direct action tactics. So for that one, we did something called the human microphone, where we already knew we were going to bring all the numbers and technically bring the community to the community meeting. And we didn't need the microphone and the speaker system, right? Like, we did this call and repeat tactic that was a very clear demonstration that we had the power in the room. And the idea was that we just don't have power here. We also have power on the blocks too. And that shifted how Plaza 16 was going to operate from then on, which was we're not going to do things as usual, and we're going to employ direct action tactics to actually get our wins, because we understand that when it comes to people power, we were always able to out-organize the Maximus and the monster. And then secondly, so that was in 2015. And I think that really, there was a lot of energy in the neighborhood that I think got let out at that action. And that I think really drove us into the summer, because the next one that comes to mind is Mission takes over City Hall, right? Now, this was something that was bigger than the fight against the monster and for the Marvel, but it was really, in my opinion at least, the core engine of it was the energy that had been created with the fight against the monster, right? And so this was something where multiple organizing campaigns in the neighborhood, multiple organizations, and even like citywide solidarity folks, we decided that the situation was obviously so bad with evictions, displacement, gentrification, lack of affordable housing. At that time, there wasn't even planned affordable housing really for the neighborhood outside of maybe one project, maybe two. And we needed to take our power directly to the People's Hall. Right. So, we went to City Hall, we took it over. People are still using those pictures to this day. People are still being inspired by those videos to this day. But it was something that demonstrated not just like power where government is, but I think it also demonstrated unity from the entirety of the Mission neighborhood and a lot of our community allies from across the city. And I think we really need that to win the campaigns. It's not just the demonstration of power, but also the unity that makes that power possible.
But there was a third event too.
Yeah, that's the one I want to talk about a little bit too, because that's the one I remember, and I had only been here for a few months. And then I remember having a conversation with you. I'd only been here for a few months, and you're like, dude, we got to go to Mission High today. I'm like, what are we going? And then you essentially, I got you actually in this room. I have video of this, and I interviewed you for about 10 minutes. I should pull that out.
I don't remember this at all.
I remember that because I was like, what have you been talking about? I hadn't been here for a
flatbed of a truck, man.
Yeah, he was. We have visuals of that too. Yeah. Talk a little bit about that. To me, that meeting was not just historical from this particular development, right? But I think in what is now and how the community goes about fighting for affordable housing throughout the city, it really set a precedent for what can be done if you have people power behind it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we're talking about the hearing at Mission High School, and that. So basically, how that came about, partially out of a little bit of a lull in the campaign that we were anticipating and really kind of feeling at the time, right? Like we had hit Maximus really hard at every opportunity we got, be it at public community meetings, be it at City Hall, be it at different commission hearings. But then things started to, let's say, slow down a little bit, right? They had gone through their hearing processes, and we could tell they were sort of trying to wait us out, right? And on our end, we needed to figure out something that would take us from, being a little bit on the defensive, being responsive, to being on the offensive, right? Like, what can we do? Understanding that, like, we just can't sit around and wait for whatever the next move from the city or the developer is going to be. We need to call this project into question right now. So the idea came about to demand a community hearing, demand an official planning commission hearing in the neighborhood, where at the time that was the largest project that was ever proposed for the neighborhood, 300 plus units. And we're like, you should have this hearing in the community in which it's going to impact. And the planning commission had never left City Hall before to come to the Mission, to come to the neighborhood and host an official hearing, right? Like, you might get a town hall here and there, or one person might come to a meeting. And previous to this, Planning Commission had only left one time in its entire history to do a hearing, and that's because it was way out in the Park Merced area. But this was something that we demanded. It took multiple months. We were working with Mission High School, with Everett Middle School. We had one date, and then the developer called the principal of the school, pretending to be a planning commissioner, said that we were going to bring violence to the hearing and to the school community, which, I mean, obviously these are lies. And so then it got delayed. But then when we finally had it, 1,000 people at Mission High School, overwhelming, 90+% against the monster and in support of the marvel, right? At an official planning commission hearing. It had never been done before. It was not only a massive demonstration of power, it was a massive demonstration of values, right? This is what the community values, and this is the values that we're going to fight for, not just today, but moving forward. So we've made a decision on this development. The city, we await yours. And that was honestly the death knell, I think, for the development, right? Like, there's no way you can come back from that.
It's a good transition into the next phase of this episode, because I remember both of you spoke at that. So I'm curious, like, as the executives of our organization, like, what was the strategy for Mission Housing, I guess, if we want to call it that, as you're observing all of these events happening? Obviously it's happening in your neighborhood, a neighborhood that you represent, that you're a steward of. But internally, what were those conversations like about what was happening in the neighborhood, and how Mission Housing wanted to get involved?
You know, I think that was an interesting time because we had rebuilt ourselves financially. We had solidified ourselves as a developer again. Mission Housing had, done big projects fixing up old buildings. We'd already been awarded 1950 Mission, 490 South Van Ness, Capuzzo. So we had reestablished ourselves as a developer. But we weren't far enough out of, 2005-ish times where we were fully accepted by the community, or where we'd earned trust back in a way that we needed to. And so for me, I was always just so honored and proud that we were not only invited to speak, but people were happy and appreciative that we showed up and we had a hand in helping plan. For me, it was the first time where I realized what Mission Housing truly is supposed to be for the mission, which is a provider of resources to established and affordable, safe, vibrant community. Now, we do that by building affordable housing, but people got to eat. People need a PA system. People need the flatbed of that truck, or they need a community room to meet, right? They need a place to put the food, or they need architecture renderings, which Mission paid for Plaza 16 to go do on their own. And so for me, it was actually really educational and transformative in the way I thought about the next 10 years of Mission Housing. And I'm in a unique place where I simultaneously have to make sure that I understand what's happening every day with all our developments and asset managements, but also be caring about what we're going to be doing in 10 or 15 years. And so that time, especially that hearing at Mission High, I got asked, I went first, that was such an honor. I will say it's one of the only few times, believe it or not, listeners, that I've been officially censured by our board. They asked me not to lay the entire history of racist redlining at the feet of the Planning Commission. I was like, but where else should I lay it?
When Marcia spoke of that, they timed her out.
Yeah. And so I just
we got a great gif out of it.
Yeah, we got a great gif out of that.
Yeah, and so I just it was personally, for my own personal growth, and I've always been simultaneously so honored to be a leader of Mission Housing, but also try to remain as humble as I can, because I have been here for decades, but I grew up out of town, and I have a lot of privilege, and so I can only have lived experience so much. But I realize that this community doesn't build itself up in the way that they deserve if Mission Housing isn't financially and human wise as strong as possible. And so it really was from that time on that I started making decisions about like not just what's best for like Mission in the moment, but what's going to give us the ability to make decisions and do what's best for the whole community.
And Sam mentions being a little bit of an outsider, Marcia, but you have someone, you just said now that you've lived here, you grew up here, you went to school here, your kids have gone to school here. You have this perspective of essentially having the one foot in Mission Housing, the other one having the ear to the community and having them, bring up perhaps stories or feelings from times past when Mission Housing wasn't as solid as we were during that time and what we were growing ourselves into. I'm curious what those conversations were like for you as someone who's as an executive of our organization who is thinking about our growth and our potential, but also has to justify essentially the feelings of community and why perhaps they weren't feeling as comfortable, coming to Mission Housing and being like, "Hey, we need your help," or we still don't trust you guys. So, what were those conversations like, or those feelings like for you as you were trying to navigate both of those, balance those things out?
It's interesting because I've never actually had experienced that before. I feel like I come from a background where I try to build relationship. I'm a true believer of shaking hands, but also establishing long-term relationships. And so it was hard for me to go into different places, sit down, and as soon as I said who I was and who I represented, there was a different feel, right? A different look. But, I also want to remind ourselves that during that time, our previous president and CEO of the organization was actually working for Maximus, right? So that didn't help the cause. Right. So right there with that alone, if there was a connection to us and we were trying to like clear the name and reestablish the organization, reestablish trust. Right. And there was a lot of meetings of us shaking hands, attempting to, share what our values were, asking people for an opportunity to learn who we were. At least for me, I used to say, "Hey, give me an opportunity to show you who I am," because I don't think, people really knew where I was coming from. Also, let's connect. Let's meet with our new executive director, get to know who he is. Let's talk a little bit more about where our journey is going. I think my first move was when I brought Chirag on board. I still remember that day, Chirag. But I thought it was important for us to have a community representative that would speak on behalf of Mission Housing. But also, I think that it was important for me to challenge ourselves. Sometimes there was conversation we had internally that sometimes our external community doesn't know that Sam and I would have, right? And I would, kind of push the envelope about doing certain things. And I'm glad to have a partner that has an ear and listens, right, to when we're bringing ideas to the table. Sometimes we agree on some stuff, sometimes we don't, but it's a matter of bringing those ideas to the table. And I think that bringing Chirag into the conversation, like Sam said, going out and sitting in with community, even though maybe people had still kind of like a 50-50, I don't know if I trust you or if I don't, because that was, let's be real, during that time, there was a lot of gentrification happening in the neighborhood. We had a lot of push, and I think this particular developer came in with deep pockets. So it was very challenging. It was like the up and down, right? Just when the community felt like they had to win, something else was resurfacing, right? So what Chirag described as that plan of action, I still remember when you guys were at the Union Hall. We were there.
You were there, yeah.
We were there, and that mic was pretty loud. I know that you guys were high pitch when you guys came in, and you guys shut down that whole entire meeting. There was no opportunity for them to even say a word during that time because they came strong. So we knew we had to participate one way. We knew that we had to position ourselves. We knew that we had to earn trust, and I think that's what we did for the first probably even 7 to 10 years while we were trying to rebuild the organization. So from my perspective too, from an operations, but also from services, what I ended up doing too for that particular hearing that you're mentioning, Chirag, is that we put our other person, Erin, from Valencia Gardens, which she was doing more of community engagement at one of our sites. We asked them to start bringing in residents. would you like to participate? This also involves you. I know you have housing, but we need to help others, and we need to make sure that we're pushing the envelope. So we had, I have a picture still that pops up as a reminder.
There was a few residents of ours who were also at the hearing and spoke too. So that was great.
Yeah. So I think that's what I like to share, how we position ourselves and what we did to help the cost under our circumstances and while we were trying to run the organization as well, because those are two different things, right? People sometimes think, oh, Mission House is not sitting at the table, but we also had a responsibility with the 3,000 families that we support
already.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just to add one thing on that, pre me being here trajectory kind of already happening was, I don't know if this was before or after that Mission United meeting, but I remember there was a bond passed, Prop A, and there was $50 million earmarked for the mission, like 50 or 60 earmarked for the mission, right? And that was a meeting that happened right next door at CDP. And you all were there at the meeting, but you were also there as affordable housing experts, right? Like, because we needed folks who were experts in different fields.
That was the first time I was an expert. It was really
good. It was like, we don't know about.
Bring the experts to the podium.
I'm happy to be an expert,
right? Yeah. But we need affordable housing experts who we can call to explain what the money could be used for, the financing, land banking, all this stuff, right? And Mission Housing was one of the organizations who were there as experts. This is before I even really knew who you were, right? But I knew you there as Mission Housing's ED and our experts. Then we had a question. I had called you over, and helped. And Mission Housing's front lobby turned into a daycare that day.
That's right.
I was completely unplanned. Anna's probably still unhappy about it or whatever, right? Because we had too many people, right? We had like 300 people, right? We were trying to figure out how to order. Y'all even ordered extra pizza, right? And so that stuff was happening for a while, right? Like with them, and then this.
We were supporting in different ways also. I think that's what we're also trying to share.
I want to talk a little bit. We're talking about the highlights, and we're talking about the ebbs and flows, not just of this particular development, but also about Mission Housing. And we were talking before, Sam, and you mentioned how this particular development is a great microcosm of everything that Mission Housing has worked on over the last couple of decades. And with those, you have your highlights, which we talked about already. I want to know a little more about the lowlights and how Plaza 16, how Mission Housing was able to persevere through some of those lowlights and really get us to this date of Thursday, April 23rd, when we were breaking ground officially at the Marvel. But talk a little bit about the lows and how what perseverance looks like during those times.
Yeah, well, I mean, similar to what I mentioned before, the circumstances that led up to the hearing being our next demand were, low in terms of the fact that we weren't seeing opportunities to engage or to push back or to move our demands forward, right? Like, it's the reality that sets in where it's, you did really good the first few rounds, but that other person is still up. They're still hanging in there. And in this case, for the monster, right, they had money in the bank to drag this out. We have other campaigns, other priorities, a lot of other stuff that's happening. And it becomes difficult to already justify a multi-year campaign and then have that capacity for, well, something might come up in a year. It might come up in a year and a half, right? And so, the energy levels are difficult, and there's a lot of other priorities. And so what came out of that was the hearing. But during that time also, one thing that was moving and did move was the architectural designs. Because, we had been working with these pretty simple 3D designs of just here's a generic building, and we had plopped it on with some green. But we didn't have anything that actually resembled this could be a serious affordable housing alternative, right? So what we did was, Mission Housing was a part of the coalition. At that time, I had talked to Sam about, hey, is there anything we can do on, maybe if we have an architect partner who could help us out here, help us envision this idea into a real building with something professional. Sam hooked us up with Mithun. Mission Housing was able to put some money down for some preliminary work, and we were able to get some pretty good preliminary designs for the Marvel, something that we can use in presentations to the city, to foundations, et cetera, as like, this is a serious alternative. And it's something that we ended up using during the hearing, during the presentation, right? Like, all right, planning commission, and honestly, the entire community audience, this isn't just some dream or something that we just threw together as an image on paper. We're actually trying to figure out how to make this work on top of a BART Plaza as a real building, right? And the architect, it was Mithun, and Mithun also had experience building atop of a BART Plaza at Kapusa up at Ball Park.
Yeah, I just want to add, like, that was also one of the first times that Mission, so we learned this lesson when we rehabbed our buildings. One thing that Mission does that others don't is when we go in and rehab a building where it's full with our tenants, we bring in a lawyer that we pay for, but that the tenants can have for representatives, right? We want to make sure they're protected. Not, but like at least the HRC or someone. And when Chair-Dog asked about if we could do the architect, like the same thing hit, I was like, sure, we'll put it up. But then Plaza 16's got to go and do this planning. You got to go talk to the architect. I would love nothing more than for affordable housing advocates to start learning about how hard it is to actually build affordable housing. And I think that worked out really, really well. And one thing that came of it that I didn't expect was I realize now that when affordable housing advocates advocate for affordable housing, they get condescended to a lot by developers or mayors or supervisors or planning commissioners. Oh, well, sure, you can demand it, but like, how many units are there going to be and what's the building going to look like? Well, here it is. Here, we put the work in. You can see this. This is literally self-determined, paid for by Mission, managed by Plaza 16. And I found that like that simple act and those drawings went a really long way. With the Planning Commission, those drawings ended up informing the eventual request for qualifications that the Mayor's Office of Housing put out for the development that we're celebrating on Thursday. We did work ahead of time that would have probably taken the city 3 to 6 extra months of doing their own massing studies and things. And so, just going back to Mission, being so proud of Mission, being a supporter of community, that's what it can look like. That people don't realize a lot, even that's went down, because we don't need all accolades. I just want to see people happy and in good homes.
So much has changed, not just on that block, right, or on that side of the block, 16th and Mission, on the Plaza, but also just in Mission housing in general. We're talking about where we're at, 15, 17, 20 years ago. But, another kind of wrinkle in all this, Marcy, is COVID. I mean, by the time that you get all this action that we have in there, right? We have all this action happening, and then we have the victory. You were on the Plaza for that. We did the whole Vuvuzela stuff. It was a great celebration, and shortly thereafter, everything shuts down.
A week after the celebration, we went into lockdown.
It just feels really crazy, right? Because talk about perseverance as a whole for an organization and everything, not just that particular development. But how does the team here at Mission Housing, how does the team here at Plaza, how does Chirag, who eventually left Mission Housing and came back, how do we keep that dream alive, right, during that time when everything was shut down? It just speaks to the perseverance, not just of Mission Housing, but also of the particular project as well.
I think
we had meetings every 2 weeks or so. Before Chirag selfishly left us for a couple of years to go find himself.
Should we talk about
and
that?
come back? That'll be another podcast.
I found myself back here.
That'll be another podcast. No, but in all seriousness,
He found his way.
those were great meetings too. Chirag and a couple of Plaza 16 folks asked myself and Scott Falcone, who's a longtime supporter and partner of Mission Housing, to start putting numbers together about what it would take to actually build the Marvel. Because again, back to the condescension, we were hearing, oh, well, you can demand these units all you want. Do you have any idea how much it costs? Well, yeah, we do. we are actually good at that. And so we started having meetings with stakeholders, Plaza 16 members, the architects, the San Francisco Foundation. Fred Blackwell came, and, you know, a lot of it was me and Scott getting peppered with real technical tax credit. How do you fund these things? But like answering them on behalf of not just Mission, but the community was like one of my most proud moments. And it happened to be during COVID when I think we needed something to focus on that wasn't all doom and gloom. I remember pacing up and down my old apartment, you know, trying not to butt in. Well, we were all still learning how to do Zoom, you know, how to like raise your hand.
Unmute yourself.
Talking once.
Marcy, I think the community work that we were able to do during that time really reflected like our dedication to the neighborhood, and I'm sure that played a part eventually when we were, you know, gladly out of that situation. But it showed just that a development like as large as the Marvel and the Mission was going to be in good hands, because we demonstrated at the most devastating of times in the neighborhood, we were able to step up and take care of the neighborhood.
That's true. I remember you and I speaking regularly about, especially during the pandemic, how do we share resources? That was a big deal back then. And let's just talk really about how we were all isolated. We were all like, you know, in different places. We were not seeing each other. We were accustomed to always coming together and brainstorm. Now you're on this virtual platform, but we saw the need. There was a need for resources. There was a need for sharing what was coming into our inboxes. And I remember you and I actually shared about where can we put this? Where can we start posting some of this stuff so the community knows? And, you know, we said, well, our website. I remember you helped me put a lot of those resources up there. You know, the other thing I can think of is during that time is I'm appreciative to Chidak, because as busy as we were with the pandemic, anybody that dealt with it, all of our community here dealt with this. Everybody did internationally. We were so busy trying to keep our operations going that sometimes we would not forget, but we were so preoccupied. And Chidak would always remind me, Marcia, we're going to have a community meeting online. Can you join? It's at 6:00. You might probably remember that. And I said, I will try to make it. I think I missed the first one. And then he reminded me again for the second one. And, you know, I was able to join for that one. It was motivating to see folks still under the pandemic coming together to still talk about the marble, right? Or whatever project that, you know, the community was advocating for. But I think we were very resilient during that time, and we really stepped up, and community engagement really stepped up. And I think it was about how do we take care of our families? We still had the same responsibility than when COVID was not here. We still needed to support our communities overall.
Yeah, and frankly, I mean, on Thursday, it is all about community, and we want to make sure we celebrate community in that sense. Why we want to get together in that space, bring stakeholders from all over the spectrum of this particular development. I do want to end with this and reflect, because, you know, when we're up in the podium on Thursday, we have 2 minutes, 3 minutes. We're bound to forget people that deserve to be recognized for their work from, you know, when there was, you know, the creation of Plaza 16 back in 2014, throughout this particular fight against the monster, to now it being the Marvel. I want each of you to take a few minutes to reflect on some of these, I call them unsung heroes, but people that are we're not just going to have enough time to thank everyone. We're going to get music and we're going to get called off the podium before we ever get a chance to thank everyone that we can. So who wants to go first? Go ahead, Sam.
I got a couple, if that's okay. The very first one I would like to thank, rest in peace, is John Barber. John was a real estate political gypsy in San Francisco for decades. When I was first approached about being executive director, John was the first person to be supportive of me. And John was someone who always loved and supported Mission Housing more than anything else. He helped us with our first projects. He let me bounce ideas off him. He took me to La Rocca's at 8 p.m. on a Tuesday when I was like so down and thinking about quitting or whatever in the beginning because it was so hard. And I wouldn't be here without him. And in many ways, Mission wouldn't be here without him and all the support that he did not just for us, but against some of the hate that we experienced 15 years ago. Another person, just because I don't think he can make it because he's a super big political person now, is Josh Arce. Josh is our former board chair. And someone who really supported Plaza 16. He's a business manager for the laborers who actually started Mission Housing in 1971. You know, they paid for our Secretary of State to be filed. And, Josh also has just been somebody who always supported Mission Housing politically and socially and community-wise in a way that lifted us up and gave us the resources that we needed to help ourselves. So those are the two people I'd like to thank.
Go ahead, Chidak.
Sure. First two folks that come to mind, first of which is Andy Blue, who I'm sure you also know as your daughter's former elementary school teacher. But Andy, he's in Indiana now, so he's not going to be able to make it, but he played an extremely pivotal role, particularly in the first half of the campaign, in terms of just throwing down on organizing, throwing down on materials, getting a lot of folks together, trying to bring the energy out of other people, right? There's, I can get either too serious or down or whatever, like anyone can, and he would always try and be like, no, like you have to be energetic for this. Like you have to get excited for this. This is something something we can always win, no matter how, especially in the early stages, it was like, it's going to be a long-term win here. But he always definitely provided a lot of energy, fuel, enthusiasm, values. It's hard to say what he didn't bring to Plaza 16 Coalition, for sure. And we'll definitely be thinking about him on Thursday. And then the second person is Diana Martinez, who was with me at the Mission SRO Collaborative, and we worked at Dolores Street together. She was an organizer with us, and then she became program manager. But, we played different roles in the collaborative, and I would say that, especially in the early part of the campaign, again, like we had so much involvement of SRO residents who live around the 16th Street corridor and who use the plaza as their outdoor space, right? And I think in terms of making sure folks were there, that a lot of these folks are in private SROs, right? Like we were fine at Altamont, Apollo, and the nonprofit SROs because you guys welcomed us in and you guys let us talk to residents and pass out flyers and everything. The private SRO owners did not, right? So, her and I we can say it, we would sneak into buildings and, say we're just here to talk about a meeting. And then once we had a meeting off site about what was happening on the plaza with the monster development. And so she played a fundamental role. She played a major role in also helping with the meetings that were the community process that led to the Marvel being the community demand for the alternative vision. So, that's what I can think of.
What about you, Marcia?
I'm going to say something that is probably a little different, but I do have some other folks too that are community players. But number one, I think I like to thank our staff. And I'll tell you why. Because Sam and I could not do the work that we do if it wasn't for our team that step up every day so then we can do our piece, which is to go out and find and support the needs that the community may have. That's number one. And also many of the residents, believe it or not, a lot of residents have come out and be supportive of, physical demonstrations and actions and et cetera. So I do want to put our residents out there too, because I do see them. And I have a few pictures with them actually at the hearing. Yeah. But I also want to, I have a little list here because I didn't want to forget some of the folks, definitely Mr. Blue is what I call him. He was a teacher of my daughter in elementary school, and it was surprising to me to encounter him as a community organizer because I was like, whoa, that was a shift. But yes, definitely I encountered him there. But I wanted to give a shout out to Oscar Grande because he was one of the individuals that allowed me to sit at the table with him when Sam and I took over. And even though there was different opinions going on about mission housing, he still allowed the door to remain open. He's a good listener, and he likes to doodle a lot while he's listening to you. But I think he gave us an opportunity to brainstorm with him in some unique conversations. I do remember also Maria Samudio. She was always, open to having a conversation with me, and and just be part of that without judgment, I think. And so I want to highlight her, but I also want to highlight, we talked about Kristen Acosta from the Women's Building, another person that I felt like she was always open and kind and never judgmental, but willing to listen. And I appreciated that, right? Because during that time, it was not easy to go into our community without having to feel a certain way. And I have a whole list of names here, but just to highlight some of the folks that I remember fondly of and always willing to shake hands with you and be open to hearing and listening to where we were at. And I'm sure we are missing tons of them. So I just want to say personally that everybody that lent a hand or opened doors to us, I just want to say thank you to.
Yeah, there's so many different businesses around the corridor that have opened the doors to community for this fight against the monster that turned into the Marvel. So many people who have, were attended, whether it was the big hearing over at Mission High or any of the many demonstrations, a lot of the Plaza days that are also there as part of the timeline. I think one thing that is demonstrated throughout this particular development is just that in order to combat the deep pockets of an organization or a company like Maximus, there is true currency in people power, right? Mm-hmm. And so this particular project, someone who is a bit of an affordable housing nerd myself and is able to see other developments throughout the country, Sam, you'd agree with me on this. One day, hopefully, this will be a case study in just how effective community can be when it comes to battling, the large, private equity, money that is trying to take over neighborhoods and actually, put profit over people and having people really step up and be able to combat that. So, that's another thing that there are so many different people that you can name in this particular question that played a role. And it's just as big as, Mission Housing and our co-developer, Meta, coming in and developing on the site, which is phase 1 with 136 units of PSH. So anything to wrap up? I know we talked a lot now, but anything that we want to do to close out?
I do want to close out with something. I just want to say that there is a difference between what people understand for community engagement. Then, for example, it's community engagement is not just imposing something, it's really listening to folks. And I think this is kind of a lesson that we learned from this whole experience, that our community was not being heard. And so they spoke loud and clear about what they wanted to see in the Mission District.
I think that, of course, killing the monster was paramount. But to me, it seemed like we really came together and grew Plaza 16 and became community when we started organizing for the Marvel. To build something, to leave something that will last for decades, not to just stop something that is demonstrably bad. But I think a lot of times community activists lose steam and funds and emotional bandwidth. But I'm so proud to have helped stay the course and go from killing a monster to building a Marvel, because that's what's really important. The Marvel is what's so important. And I'm excited for Thursday because that's what needs to be celebrated, that we are building something that will last for decades and decades.
And unity.
Yeah.
There's power in unity.
Yeah. You can only fight against something for so long. And especially when it's your neighborhood, your city, you want to fight for something, right? You want to fight for your place in this place. And that's what the Marvel was for so many people for so long. And now will be, right? Will be a building, and with the unity piece, right? I think, just ending with if we want more Marvels, understanding that it is the result of forward thinking, strategic organizing that was unified around, then we have to get forward thinking, organizing that gets unified around again. Right? Like that's the only way to have more Marvels to actually address community needs in terms of numbers, but also community needs in terms of process.
Well, on behalf of myself, on behalf of Chirag, Marcia, Sam, we hope everyone enjoys the celebration on Thursday. Come out, participate, get ready to party.
Yeah.
And thank you for joining us on another episode of the San Francisco Revival
Thanks,
Podcast.
y'all.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
That's
share
right.
across.
Smash that like button.
There.
We got it.
We're smashing our numbers. Dude.
Smash it.
We
Good
got
job, everybody.
Smashing the like button.
Thank you, everyone.